Sorry about that, babe.
Oh boy, ActRaiser 2. Growing up, and still to this day, I love the first ActRaiser on the SNES. It's one of my favorite games, and I feel it's one of the more unique games ever created. I was aware of ActRaiser 2 in that it was generally seen as hard and a bit of a disappointment and somewhat lacking. However, that did not deter me from purchasing this game some 12ish years ago while I was in college. I played it for a bit and yeah, it was hard, and boy was I disappointed. Well, last winter, ActRaiser 2 won a community suggestion randomizer, so I was tasked with completing this on Twitch. What an experience. Developed by Quintet and published by Enix, ActRaiser 2 was released in North America in November of 1993. ActRaiser 2 also draws many ideas and similarities between that of the God vs. Devil story in the first game, as well as Paradise Lost and the Divine Comedy. Three things are immediately going to jump out at you. First, the graphics are freaking awesome. Secondly, you'll notice much more to do in the action platforming segments of the game. And lastly, yeah, so there's only action platforming in this game? Whatever happened to the Sky Palace and the little SimCity sort of thing we had going on? I don't know, guess they forgot it. That's right, one of the more questionable decisions of all time in gaming, ActRaiser 2 removed the town simulation and building aspect of that of the first game. For players like me that enjoyed that very much in its simplistic nature, it was a bit of a crushing blow. But fear not, as you will likely be crushed by the game's difficulty before you really have time to feel sad about the lack of town building. ActRaiser 2 is simply summed up as a slog. The difficulty is mind-numbing at times, with very questionable enemy placements, blind platforming, and getting used to the new controls of that our hero possesses. The main difference in this from the first ActRaiser is that the hero can now do a double jump and glide with his wings. It's tough to explain, but these mechanics are incredibly clunky and will certainly lead to much frustration. When you do a double jump, you actually end up jumping forward a little bit, so in order to do a somewhat stationary double jump, when you land you must actually press the jump button 3 times in a row fairly fast. The gliding also features different aspects such as a normal glide, a slow glide, and a fast glide. At the end of the normal glide, for example, you will do a screeching halt which pushes you forward, more likely than not, more so than you actually want it to be. You're able to attack off your glide as well and are actually able to now aim your sword in different directions you were unable to do in the first game, including a downward Scrooge McDuck style thrust that gives the hero some much needed iframes. This is actually something very good for a change. The soundtrack I feel is very uninspired. I felt like a lot of the tracks were just decent and there were maybe 1 or 2 that could be considered 16-bit bangers. But compared to the first game, it's definitely lacking. The one thing that ActRaiser 2 really has going for it are the graphics. They're great. Period. The level designs, bosses, and enemies all look wonderful, with exception of some odd design choices here and there that go from horrifying demon bosses to sort of cartoonish ones like the Ghost. Anyway, I died a lot. I was frustrated. The jarring changes from the first to second were too much for me to overcome in enjoying this game on the same level. I was more so just relieved when I beat the game rather than celebrating in my victories. You can catch my awful first playthrough in the description below. I regrettably give ActRaiser 2 a disappointing 5 out of 10. Certainly not the worst game I've ever played, but it's really flawed. Maybe if this was a standalone title that didn't even have the ActRaiser name attached to it, I probably would have judged it a little less harshly, but I must compare it to the first, and here we are. If you guys like this review, please consider subscribing, leave a like, comment. I do my best to reply to all comments on all videos, and until next time.